Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the LitRPG Audiobook Podcast. I'm Ray. I'll be reviewing some recent and classic LitRPG audiobooks for you. And first, I do want to apologize. I know this is getting out a little bit late, and that's because we've had some massive restructuring in the office in the last few days. Honestly, for the last 6 days, everything's been ripped up around here. We've got the front porch destroyed. We've got the office destroyed. We're putting in new sound systems. Just everything's just ripped up, and I've had nowhere to do any work at. So I apologize for that. But today, I'm going to begin with The Accidental Raider, a LitRPG Swashbuckler. Yes, by Jamie Davis and CJ Davis. Narrated by Stacey Gonzalez, with a book length of 9 hours and 35 minutes.
Carrie Dix reached up and traced the faint lines of the scars on her face. The mirror in her cabin had been a gift from her crew after they'd taken out their 5th raider ship. While it was nice to see her reflection again after so long, it was bittersweet. She'd changed since she'd come to this place nearly a year before. The battle scars were just part of it. The healing potions and spells from the temple priests had done their work. They made her well again after her injuries following the Crown Prince's rescue. That fight had nearly killed her. Despite the magic, though, nothing healed perfectly, and there were always scars. Inside and out. Mom would be so pissed. "What was that, Cap'n?" Percy asked. The ship's cabin boy stood ready by the door with her cloak in his hands, waiting for her to head up onto the main deck of her ship. The Vengeance. "Nothing, Percy. I was just talking to myself."
So, I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, but I'm really loving the direction the series is taking more and more. If I'm honest with you, I would say that there was no way in Hades I would have ever thought that I would enjoy a story set aboard a ship. I mean, hell, when I was a kid, I loved Captain's Courageous, The Voyages of Sinbad, and any Errol Flynn flick in which he buckled a swash or hoisted a mainsail. Reading about them is an entirely different matter. For example, Red Seas Under Red Skies by Scott Lynch in the Gentleman Bastards series was a snorefest. At its best, it was a snorefest. And the reader was forced to endure them, the characters, Jean-Paul and, Locke Lamora, learning how to man a ship from the ground up. And while I usually do enjoy learning a few new things, I felt like I was scrubbing the poop deck most of the time or scraping barnacles off the side of a ship. Here, I did not have that feeling. This was a really neat start to finish, and it could have been set into any kind of fantasy world or even real life, just back in the old days when there were pirates running around on the coast. It was just that decently written. It was that good. It was that exciting. It was just that fun. It really captured the flavor of those old movies I just told you about. And I'm sure most of you have never seen Captain's Courageous or, if they've even heard of Errol Flynn at this age, because I know I'm an old man. See the white stuff up here. I'm getting older. So those were things that I had when I was a kid, and I think you guys are missing out. But this was just incredible. Okay, and now I want to go back a little bit and say this too. I say that I really am kind of embarrassed about how much I'm enjoying the series because I loved the first 3 books. Hal Dix was a great character. But I will say that the books after book 1, because book 1 was, of course, the originator, they became repetitive. It was kind of like, okay, today you are no longer a thief, you are a fighter. So you have to go through building yourself up and getting through A, B, C, D, and E to get to a certain point in your levels. Book 3 was, okay, now you're going to become a wizard. But not just any wizard. You're going to become every wizard. You're going to become a fire wizard. And every elemental wizard there is, you're going to be able to do that. And then he went through and he leveled those up. And then he finally beat the bad guy. Which, that was a pretty neat thing. But it was kind of like, okay, I knew what to expect. It wasn't a surprise and it wasn't a shock. Here, Carrie Dix, Hal's daughter, started off the series as the accidental duelist. And she's still a duelist. However, if you really want to know the fact of it is, I think she's now more of a dual class, because she is now receiving prompts and things like that for seagoing, for sailing. So I think she's got a sailor thing in there too, as a dual weld sort of class. So she's not just one thing, she's both. And I'm beginning to suspect that whatever that Hal or Mona or Carrie apply themselves to, they could branch off and literally start their own class all over again without ever having to leave the game. And that's a really cool concept. And that's what was part of what made this so much fun. So here we get Carrie Dix already performing as a captain, well seasoned, and the crew willing to go to hell and back just to bring her back a comfy chair if she so desired. The gameplay works really, really well, especially when Carrie has to do some serious sailing through some impossible waters. The gaming elements come in pretty strong and work. They work really hard. It's impressive how much thought went into the whole gameplay aspect of this. I loved her aiming the cannon as much as sailing the ship. It all worked. And one thing I wanted to bring up in the last book that was the way that Davis weaves his tributes into The Princess Bride. Okay, side note, The Princess Bride is one of my all-time favorite movies. And seriously, I kid you not when I say this. My family, we quote The Princess Bride numerous times throughout the day. If we leave, the last thing we say to each other is, hey, bye, have fun storming the castle, that sort of thing, as you wish. Those things reverberate through our house every single day. It is just there. So when I get to see the Dread Raider Carrie, I smile. I enjoy that. I love it because it's a great homage to an amazing story with an amazing cast. It's just one of those brilliant things. So I forgot to mention it in my last review, but with William Goldman dying as of the time of this recording, I don't see how I could not mention it, double negative and all. So he references a lot of Princess Bride stuff, just to let you know. And it's amazingly done well, okay? I keep saying amazingly done well or how great this is. This is a really, really good story. I'm really getting into it. I'm surprised at how much I'm getting into it. And another thing that I really enjoy about this book is the Davises have no problem killing people. Yeah, I'll get to that. Okay, well, kidding completely aside, I respect that he runs close to, mentioning the Princess Bride without outright doing it. He doesn't beat you over the head with it, such as Carrie being the Dread Raider, as I said before. It really meant to me as a lot of a fan of Goldman and the Princess Bride. So thank you, Jamie, for sharing your love for something without clubbing us over the head. Now, another thing I was really happy to see finally was the return of Hal and Mona, Carrie's parents. However, I almost wish the upgrade to the game would have forced them to take on new classes. I think Mona would have been a great paladin. But it was nice to see Hal unite with his old friend, the Empress, and give he and his wife start their searching for the daughter. This book is really, really fun. And I'm going to give some credit to Davis once again, because as I said before, just moments ago, he has no problem killing people in this book. He kills a boatload of them. And I don't mean that facetiously. Literally, boatloads of people die. And characters who are actually pretty integral to the story, they don't make it. There's a lot of people that just get ganked here or there, especially at the end of the book. So I am all for that. I think that character growth is dependent on loss. If you ever read anything written by Joss Whedon or watch anything he's done, you'll see that there is no such thing as happiness in his universe. The characters, as soon as they get this close to happiness, something destroys it, because it is the pain and suffering that makes you grow and develop as a character. Loss is one of the biggest things. If you've ever watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer, probably the most well-known episode of all time that really defined Buffy's character was called The Body. And I don't even know what the name of 99% of the episodes are called. I remember that one because that's the episode where Buffy's mother dies. And it really causes Buffy to go through a lot of changes. Same thing here. He kills a lot of Carrie's friends, and it has an impact. There are things that go through a process, and that process of death really put you through a meat grinder and changes you and makes you better, bigger, and stronger. Now, there is one thing that I have to say I was kind of expecting. We have right now a competition for the Emperor's seat, and it's the Duke and then the Empress's grandson. And I really foresaw what happens here appearing before it actually came up in the book. I said, I know at some point, just because of the way the Duke is and the way that the Empress's grandson is, there's going to be something that happens that shifts the playing field a little bit. And darn if I wasn't right. I have to say, Mr. Davis has a good way of thinking because he thought the same way that I did. So it's a pretty nice thing. I'm just wondering how far we go. Is this going to be a trilogy, or are we going to extend it out further? I would really like to see Carrie Howell and Mona stick around in this new world for a bit longer this time. I think it would be really neat to have them just be there, and I think that Carrie's going to stay regardless. Now, last time around, you may remember I was carping about how I was upset that Scarlato hadn't have been brought back to continue the series, because Roberto Scarlato is a favored narrator of mine, but I felt that Stacey Gonzalez had done a decent enough job. Now, I stand by that assessment. She does okay, but I really have some issues with the way she read some sentences, and her overall emotional range seemed to be remaining rather level. I don't get a lot of emotional heat or sadness from her, and there were certainly times that there should have been more emotionally charged dialogue or a faster pace employed as the story carried on. Again, she did a really decent job, it just didn't overwhelm me. So at this point, I'm really wondering if Scarlato couldn't come back because he added something to the story. And just because Carrie's a girl, I don't think you have to have a female reading. Now, again, I'm going to say I hate switching narrators midstream. I think that if you got book 1 and it's got this narrator, then book 2 and 3 and 4 should do the same unless you've had a real falling out with your narrator. In that case, I completely understand that. But you should do everything you can because I can tell you as a consumer, one thing I hate is change. I like to have things remain the same way, the way they are. I don't want to see the font go from, Times New Roman to some bizarre, Lucinda writing. Okay, I just don't want to see that in my book, let alone having, somebody's voice in my ear change all of a sudden. And again, that was one of those things that certainly threw me off in Super Sale of Superheroes, because originally you had Jeff Hayes do an amazing story, and then Nick Podell came in the second book. And Podell, if he had started the series off, would have been great. I'd have said, oh man, Nick just did a killer job on this. But he came in after Hayes, and that just really kind of kicked me right. I mean, I just could not glom onto it the way that I wanted to. I enjoyed the book. I loved it. I mean, it's brilliant, but it just wasn't the same as if it had Jeff, because that's what I'd been broken in with. So, don't switch horses now, but if you go at the end of this, the next book is the end of the trilogy, and you go to start something new, go back to Scarlato. I mean, honestly, I'm nothing against Stacey Gonzalez, but she just does not carry the emotional punch, or the weight that this story needs, because Carrie goes through a heck of a lot, and Gonzalez, she just maintains this nice level playing field of speaking the whole time. She is super crystal clear, super positive in what she does, but she doesn't have an emotional wallop that I need to go through this. So my final score for this. And again, I heartily recommend this. This was a very fun romp. I'm excited to see where the story leads. I cannot wait for the next book. The Davises are doing fantastic. Final score, 8.2 stars. And that's only because, like I said, I have taken some umbrage with the reading. There was just some things where she said something and it was like the sentence stopped midway through and then picked right back up. It was just a little weird for me. And then there was no, like I say, there was no weight to what was going on. And if you want to know the truth of it, there were points where one voice kind of sounded like another. I mean, there was just, if they hadn't said, this is Mr. Bocott or whoever, they all started to sound the same after a little bit. So just to give you a warning. So 8.2, I mean, it's still good. It's an amazing book, and it's an amazing series. And I think it's really got room for growth. I can only see this getting better and better as time goes on. So my next book is The Merchant of Tiqpa by Charles Dean, narrated by Matthew Broadhead, with a book length of 13 hours and 48 minutes.
When he finished loading into Tiqpa for the second time within a matter of minutes, he was left with a strange sense of disorientation. Moving into the game was normally seamless and smooth, but this experience had been almost jarring. What just happened? Where am I? He craned his head around him in every direction, trying to figure out where he was, and his sense of alarm grew with every passing sweep of his surroundings. Waves and beaches in front of me, forest behind me, and not a soul in sight. What in the... He looked around, certain that a glitch had occurred. Oh God, this isn't going to be one of those awful stories where I get stuck in an MMO, is it? He started to panic. Something is definitely not right. Am I in the developer side of the Tiqpa world? Hey, easy there! If you turn your head too fast, it'll unscrew and fall right off. A woman's voice called out from behind him, catching him off guard with its friendly word of warning. Spinning around, Locke was greeted by a suit of full steel plate armor so large and ostentatious that it made him question how he missed spotting it the first time.
Well, true believers, I have to say that there have been a few things that being able to use to lift my spirits this week, where not only did Stan Lee die, but also William Goldman. The best thing I could have asked for was a Charles Dean book. Yes, that's actually the truth of it. If you said, what would make you feel better after Stan Lee and William Goldman, two of your heroes, have died, I would say, give me a Charles Dean book that I haven't read. And you would be right. So, how about a continuation of his Bathrobe Knight series, you ask? Well, now you're getting scary if you ask me that question, because it's exactly the thing I needed to soothe the pain in my soul. Now, the funny thing is, though, that this might be a continuation in the series, but it's not a continuation of the original story. And I want to differentiate that right off the bat. The beginning of the Bathrobe Knight stories dealt with a fellow named Darwin, who is a demon, and he is slowly becoming aware that his species has been wiped out for various reasons, and he is the last person that can save his people. He can bring them back from the brink of extinction. And he uses a couple other people, friends of his, to maybe further his goals, but he's trying to be cool about it. He's not trying to be really jerky. He's got a friend named Stephanie, who she just transform everybody and leave it at that. And he's trying not to just force people into something he doesn't want to see done. So this book is set in that world. It's set there, but it does not play out with those other characters. They do make brief appearances, I will say that. You do get to see Darwin and a few other people here or there, and there are references to his demon hordes and the bathrobes themselves and that sort of thing. But overall, this is a completely different story. And, best of all, it is actually an homage to William Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. And I have to say, Dean does an incredible job with this. It was a surprise at how well this went. Now, I'm going to say, you may recall where I kind of lamented after the Bathrobe Knight 3 ended, where I said, oh man, there's not going to be any more audiobooks made in the series because the bearded Lord of Bacon says no more. However, something magical happened, and we got book 4, and I'm not complaining. I think Matthew Broadhead just said, hey, are we going to record this thing or what? I guess I'll just do it and we'll see what happens. So I think, I think that he just kind of snuck it in there, because I was told we would never see another book from here. So I'm really happy that we got this. And I have to say, this is a really good story. I'd hoped to save this book, honestly, for listening for my drive back home over the Thanksgiving break. I'm actually going back home to see my parents over Thanksgiving. And traditionally, we have listened to the Bathrobe Knight 1, 2, or 3, depending on when we were going back, either on our way there for Christmas or for Easter or for Thanksgiving. And so we've had, Charles Dean as our ride-along partner. He's been our silent partner in the car as his story's been told, because my kids love these stories. But I just couldn't wait. So I jumped in and got reading this as soon as possible. And if you remember last time, I did the same thing with book 3. When BK3 came out, my son actually caught me listening to it, and he snapped. He was like, I can't believe you're listening to this without me. And I said, well, it'll be here. I can listen to it again. It won't bother me a lick. So we did. But again, this time I got through, and no one knows that I did this. That's why Prop Guy is not here today, because if Prop Guy knew what I have done, I would have things thrown at me the entire time I was reading this review to you. So, if you could just be nice and not share that information with him, I would appreciate it. Okay, so that aside, a little background for you before we go any further. I started off in college many, many eons ago as an English major, and one of my favorite classes that I took was my Shakespeare class. I have loved The Great Bard for a number of years. Hell, I mean, the only episode of Moonlighting I ever watched was her Taming of the Shrew adaptation. That should tell you something. I tune into shows I've never seen before just for William Shakespeare. If they do something really good, I'm impressed. I have loved the Bard for a number of years. Just loved him. And Shylock, it appears, is Charles Dean's favorite character, as he's based this entire book off The Merchant of Venice. Now, I will have to say, I really do appreciate Shylock as a character. However, the greatest Shakespearean character of all time is Iago. I will fight you on this, Master Dean, but Iago is the greatest. Shylock comes in right below him. But we can go back and forth on that later. But Iago's the best. I love Iago. I've actually played Macduff in a couple of plays, just because. So you can see, I really enjoy Shakespeare. Now, before you freak out and nope your way out of here if you're getting literated or something, I have to say that I was most impressed with the deft way he manages to flawlessly interweave the literature portion of the story with the lit RPG portion of the tale. He sneaks in characters and plot details without really being obvious about it, and still keeps the story moving ahead effortlessly. Okay, truth be told, I was rather skeptical of this tale when I first heard about it. And if you want to know the fact, I had gone and like I said, I only read, I can't say I read anymore. I listen to audiobooks exclusively now. I have for the last 2 or 3 years, because I don't have time to read. In fact, I don't have time to do much of anything anymore. My time seems to dwindle down as my days get shorter. The older I get, the less time I have, which is the exact opposite of what I expect. So I used to go on Amazon and look and see, okay, I know that he's got these 3 books, Bathrobe Night, Bathrobe Night, Bathrobe Night, and then Merchant of Tiqpa. And I read this, and it's about this guy who does this or that. And I was like, why the hell would he take this great storyline that he's got going and totally flip-flop it and just start a whole new thing? Why? I couldn't understand it. But I get now, I really do, I get now that he wanted to tell his favorite Shakespearean story and have it set in a lit RPG setting. And the easiest way for him to do that was to use what he had already written. Why create a new world? Why do that when you've already got this whole world set up and you can just bring those elements in, mix them around, and make one fantastic story? Because he really does. He just zips it right in here. And I'll be frank with you. He could have put this into any kind of a lit RPG setting. Any kind. It would have fit in Dakota Kraut's Chronicles world. It would have fit into, Delvers. He could have done this in any way, shape, or form he wanted to if he just created a new world. And he didn't. He kept it going. And that in that manner, which I really respect, he keeps the story of the Bathrobe Night alive as well. Because even though you don't see Darwin and company bouncing around and doing all these crazy things that Darwin's good for, like killing people with spoons, you do get to see what happens in the background. And like I say, they do show up. So you have things happening, and you feed that other crowd, the people that were fans of the Bathrobe Night, but you get to do something new and different, and something you really, really love. Now, like I said, I was really skeptical about this, not for the Shakespearean elements, but because it didn't continue with Darwin. Now, I love the Bathrobe Night wearing demon, and I really wanted to see where things developed afterwards. And I'm still bummed out we only get to see snippets of the original book characters, but I'm happy with what we had. And as I said, this book could have been set anywhere. It didn't have to be Tiqpa. Really didn't. The only thing that really ties this in to the original trilogy hardcore, where you say, yep. I mean, aside from the Darwin stuff, was the bonus chapters at the end of the story. That's Eliza's tale. And you get to see Darwin in a different light, and you kind of get to see the village people. Not those guys, not the village people that Darwin converts into demons in the Bathrobe Night. You get to see their perspective of what's happening as the players come into the game and why they're okay. They're really cool with becoming demons. So that was neat. In fact, I really wouldn't have minded if Dean hadn't put the extra chapters in at all. I like the way he left things with the Shy or the Locke character That was perfect. And to be honest with you, I actually think that having the bonus features, the bonus chapters, it threw the story off, because there was a really good solid ending right here, and then we got the bonus chapters. And yeah, there are bonus chapters. You don't have to read them, but it's Charles Dean. Why wouldn't you read extra chapters he's giving you? And they were really good. But of all things, truthfully, I would have put those at the beginning of the story, or left them out and put them at the beginning of the next book, because I know he has another book out after this. Just because it kind of imbalanced the whole ending of the story. Otherwise, I mean, he does this amazing thing. You get the whole story of Merchant of Venice in this well, not the whole story, because there's more to come, but in this first book, and he's really slick with the way he does it. You know, I love the way he interwove the characters. In fact, I lost my mind, because, like I said, I love Shakespeare, and I literally did not connect with Tubal, who Tubal was, which is really stupid, because I should have known who Tubal was just by his name. And after I said it, I was like, okay, I give up. I'm really stupid. But then again, when you're listening to the story and you don't connect something, that's better, because you're not saying, oh, okay, here's where they do this, and here's where they do that, and here's where, this is going to happen to him. You don't have that. And that really worked well, because I was so into the story, I didn't worry about where that character came from or that character came from. Like Sal and Saul, I was like, I know who these guys are, just like this. Okay, cool. And it worked out pretty well. The villain is really, well, he's a jerk, and you're happy to see them square off. And the pound of flesh thing, I like how that worked out. That was a pretty neat little twist there too. Matthew Broadhead has taken some hits from me recently during reviews. I have repeatedly said that he is a narrator who either sinks or swims based on the material he is given, and Dean's writing still meshes well with his vocal quirkalizations. I like that, because he's quirky and he vocalizes. That's good. Yeah, quirkalizations. I'm sorry, I digress. I do that a lot. Anyway, Broadhead does an excellent job here, and he carries the story right along. I'm so happy to have him back in the driver's seat, where he is rolling through the story instead of having the story roll over him. He is in command here, and he's taken a back seat in too many tales lately. I think that this is where he is allowed to come forth and show you his vocal skills once more, and he manages to do exactly what he needs to. He plays this out expertly. I don't know what it is, other than he is one of those people who rises or falls with the level of the skill of the writer. The quality of the story. If you've got a crappy story, he's not going to go into it great. It's just the way that seems to me. So my score here is really dependent on a few things. One, I love the entire reimagining of the Merchant of Venice in LitRPG form. This is brilliant. I haven't seen this done anywhere else. I haven't seen Shakespeare adapted, and Shakespeare's been adapted in everything so much that everything it could be considered Shakespearean at some point. But in LitRPG, I haven't seen it done before. I haven't seen it be done since. And it was a really nice thought experiment that worked really well. I would love to see him take on Macbeth, for example, or Othello, so I could get Iago. Okay. Sorry. Iago's still better than Shylock. It's my show. I can say it. Sorry, Charles. Have to say it. Secondly, I'm glad to get back onto Tiqpa after I was certain that we were not going to get any more there. Third, Dean proves just how agile his mind is to be able to create a story like this without giving anything away. Honestly, I would have to say that this was like about an 8.7, simply because it's so smartly done, so well crafted, and everything flowed. We got Shakespeare in a game world, and a glimpse at how an alchemist, of all things, an alchemist could work as a game class. I have never seen an alchemist work so well as I have here. I'll be frank with you about that. And we did get hints of what Darwin's up to. Now, I'm still going to let my kids listen to this as we travel back to see the in-laws and the parents this week, and I don't mind at all. Oh, and Charles, you did earn this box of cookies. I did say I would get you a cookie if you impress me. This is it. So you just have to stop by and pick it up whenever you want it. This is for you, if it's still here in the next couple days, because I'm a cookie fiend. But anyway, 8.7, and like I say, the only reason why I'm going to go that route is just because I think that the thing that threw it off and imbalanced it completely were those extra bonus chapters. They were really good. They were interesting. I love them, but it just did not seem like it fit in this book. It was like something that was snipped away from the third book or the first book in the series, and just kind of put in here just to make you have that. And like I said, I appreciated it, but it just didn't fit. Like that ending that you had was so rock solid. So I am going to go 8.7. And like I say, I have to give you a round of applause, because anybody who can do this with a Shakespearean story and make it work and not make it just boring as hell or dry, or this was really well done. And I know that Charles Dean thinks this is his best book he's ever written. And I'm not going to argue with him, because it's his story and it's his book. I mean, I have seen him do a lot of amazing things since this book has been written. So I can't say that this isn't his best book. I can't say it is, because I really love the way War Eternus continues to get better and better and better. And I can tell you right now, from BK1 to War Eternus 3, there is a hell of a variation on where he was here and where he's at now. He just continues to improve and improve and improve. And if you really wanted to, Charles, I think now is the perfect time. You've got this ball rolling with War Eternus, and you've got this other series that you're working on. You could come back, because you still have one more book in this series to go. So book 5 in the BK Knight trilogy, the BK trilogy. How's it a trilogy? The BK quintology to complete. You could just come back and finish one book and have Darwin and Stephanie and Shy and all his friends show up and do some things, and it would just be amazing. I think you would just knock that out of the park, and it would tie everything up together, and man, it would be just a dream come true, because this was so much fun. And I say that because like I say, I'm a Shakespearean fiend. Shakespeare, Sherlock Holmes, anybody with an S, Stevie Nicks, Shirley Manson, those types, those are the things that I love. I just come to realize I'm an S person. I don't understand. Superman. Oh my gosh. Spider-Man. Stan Lee. Stan Lee died, and this book got me through that. I will say this. Stan Lee died, and this book helped me get through that, and then William Goldman died, and this book helped me do that. So, Charles, I owe you a lot, and like I say, 8.7. I can't say it's fair, because I could blow this up and say, hey, it's a 9 or what, but I really want to be down to earth and not let my emotions of things such as my love for Shakespeare overwhelm me. Because I could just say, hey, this is a total perfect book and this and that. But I'm going to say 8.7. I'm going to be fair to you, fair to me, fair to the listeners, because this is a fun little romp, and I think everybody will enjoy it. All right, so my sound booth spotlight today is Goblin King by R.R. Verdi, narrated by Jeff Hayes, with a book length of 13 hours and 20 minutes.
The Little Slayer. He gestured to the surrounding circle. Is this what you expected? He shook his head more to himself than to Devrim. I didn't think so, but it's the price for what you've started. The first price of many to be paid, and I intend to collect in full. The Goblin King's hand tightened visibly around his war club. Devrim sucked in a breath through his teeth to help steel himself for what was to come. He dragged the chisel tip of his blade along the ground, drawing a faint line. A quick leap back put him a foot away from it. See that? Do not pass go! Do not collect $200. He flashed a lopsided grin at the Goblin King. The armored king stared at the line in silence before staring at Devrim.
You may or may not know, but Mr. Verdi has come from an urban fantasy novel. His first books were called Grave Beginnings, and I've been hoping for a long time, because I'm a huge urban fantasy fan. I really scour out trying to find things. Like I say, James Hunter's Yancey Lazarus is near and dear to my heart, because it's a fantastic book. The Iron Druid, who doesn't like Harry Dresden? So, I've been waiting for Grave Beginnings to kind of hit the airwaves, so to speak. And I know with talking with Jeff a little bit, just briefly, that he is planning on doing Verdi's urban fantasy books, which is awesome. So I'm really stoked about that. So I flipped out, not only when I saw he had done a LitRPG book, but it was also being done by SBT. So I got LitRPG, SBT, combining for me to have a nerdgasm. Seriously. I thought it was just a fantastic pairing, and I was right. Now, there are a lot of things going on. The book, it starts off in a very dystopian society that cannot afford to keep everyone fed. So certain types of people get put on the chopping block when they turn 21. Basically, you live on a space station. There's not enough room. There's not enough food. So they're being really generous and saying, okay, we're going to let you live till you're 21 years old, and then we're going to gank you because we just have too many people here. Now, that's not very logical to me. I would either say just abort before birth. That might solve some issues. I'm just throwing that out as a spitball because that's pretty much what I would do if I had a space station with limited resources. I might just say we're going to abort this kid because we can't afford to feed him. Otherwise, we're all going to die. But that's just me. I'm going to just go with it, though. I'm just going to go with it. So I sort of think this is kind of like a tribute to Logan's Run in outer space. Because if you've ever seen Logan's Run, you know that you hit a certain age and then the Sandman come and they kill you. And that's the same thing here. Devrim Banks, he is the protagonist. He turns 21, and before he is actually executed, they offer him a choice. He can either die, or he can die while he has his brain uploaded into a virtual reality game, or he can play until he dies there. And that's going to be my second thing, where I'm going to say that's just the weird part. Why you have to die in the game and have that be permanent is beyond me. I don't understand that part of it either. But that's the rule. So, fantastic. I'm going to run with it. I just think maybe they're trying to save space because the consciousness has so much to it that it can't hold, so many more minds in it than what it has. So, as people die, they insert new people. That's the only thing I can think of. So I'm going to run with it. It sounds cool to me. Now, the main character is a fellow by Devrim Baines, named Devrim Baines, and he's not got a lot of choice in that, so what's he going to do? He signs up for the VR, and he gets dropped into a world of crap right off the bat. Now, when I was telling my wife about this story, she told me it had a lot of things in common with the 100. Now, one thing I don't do is watch a hell of a lot of TV anymore. I used to when I was a younger kid, but TV and me nowadays, we're kind of like this rather than this. So I know she's watched the 100. I know it's got a space station and there's kids on the Earth, and the Earth is either irradiated or there's stuff going on. I don't know more than that. Honestly, I really don't. But she said it had a feel of the 100 to it. Because I've never seen the show, I don't know how many commonalities it has, but it's cool because she watches it, and it means she'll listen to the book in the car while I drive. So, now, luckily for Mr. Baines, his knowledge of mythology saves his butt. And because he's really well-versed in mythology, which that's really never explained, I think it just says that he really liked to read about mythology and he retained all that, he earns a class called the Slayer, which is actually a pretty sweet deal. And he gets clued into a ton of things about monsters that he faces that other players don't. So like another player might say, oh, there's a graveyard ghoul. And they might say a graveyard ghoul eats the flesh of humans. And Devrim will see as a slayer, the graveyard ghoul eats the flesh of humans, but if he eats the flesh of a living human, he will die automatically. So he has an in on like what their weaknesses are that others don't. And that's not an actual monster in the book. I just wanted to throw that out there as an example. Okay. And I say that because ghouls technically are supposed to eat the carrion corpses of the deceased, not living people. So the bulk of the book is him battling monsters and trying to figure out if the Goblin King, who he hears about relatively quickly at the beginning of the book, if he is real, and if he is, how to stop him. I love the whole title aspect. Like, he earns a title called Slayer of Men, and the implications that it has in the game. And it really does. It plays a big role in what happens in the game and how he does things. That's a lot of neat thinking going on right there, because I really thought that is what sets this apart from other LitRPG books. For example, Dakota Kraut's The Ritualist Chronicles, his character Joe earns titles, and he can combine titles and do things, and they all mean different things. But here, you pick what title floats above your head at any given time, and it has an impact on how you attack, how you strike, how you defend, maybe how you perceive things. It really changes the world around you just by having that title up there. So if you are listed as the Slayer of Men, but you're out fighting wolves, you're not fighting as effectively as you could be. And the only way that he can earn titles, and there's different classes, so they all have their own way of doing things, is by killing certain numbers of monsters until he actually earns the title Slayer of in some capacity. And like I say, that is just really, really slick. I love that. I love that a lot. I think it's brilliant, and it worked so well, and it was a very key component in the whole overall fight in the book. One thing I was not in love with was the Toad companion. Okay, now, for me, a mini companion either flies or fails. And lately, the whole snarky or braggadocious companion has just been a fail for me. I really prefer more helpful aides over companions who don't do anything, but try to take all the credit or try to just lay out some funny little lines here or there. I really, really could care less, about smart-ass remarks. And forgive me, I don't mean to swear, but smart-ass remarks can be really boring if it's not funny. And here, I don't know. They can be funny, but the Toad did not ring that bell for me at all. In fact, I was hoping the Toad would get killed. There were times I said, oh yay, here's where Mr. Froggy Pants gets squished. And yes, I did call Toad a frog. I'm just being facetious. He doesn't die. He doesn't. And the only thing that really kept me on an even keel was that Devrim pretty much feels the same way that I do throughout the book until a certain point. And then he kind of flip-flops for no real reason that I can see. None. I don't know where a bond came in there, but at some point he goes from being, I hate this guy, to, oh, I hope he's not dead. If he just kept that way, it would have been great, but I don't know. It put me off, and the character became more and more unbearable. And however, the fact that he makes a little turnaround, the little bugger, is where I, as the reader, am supposed to like him too. But I didn't. It didn't happen. I did not flip head over heels over this Toad like Devrim did. Excuse me. And I don't know why I was expected to. Because he doesn't change. He's still the smart-ass, snarky little Toad at the end that he was at the very beginning of the book. And he doesn't do anything, as far as I'm concerned, to beget your sympathy. If you want sympathy, you've got to do something pretty damn impressive to me in order to earn it. And, the Toad just does not jump out at me. Yes, I said that. I'm sorry. The Toad does not stand out to me as a character. It was just kind of I'm here for comic relief. And he wasn't funny, he was annoying. But that's just a really minor thing. He's not every other page in the book. And usually I'll say a book flew by or dragged, but this one just felt like it was paced out pretty well. There were some excellent fights and lots of realization moments and a mystery about the Goblin King that worked pretty nicely. The best part of the book was the characterizations of the players, and they were pretty real in their depictions. Although I did find a bit of the dialogue a little stilted. The ending does play out like David versus Goliath, but it was a fun fight. Now, Jeff Hayes handles this one in all his solo glory, and I was really quite happy to have that happen. With all the tag teaming that goes on over at SBT, we really don't get a chance to see single narrators shine much anymore. And I just said, last review, how much I've learned to appreciate the blending of the different narrators and the things that go on in those stories. But here it's just Jeff by himself, okay? And Jeff handles this tale masterfully, okay? I think his best characterizations are the females, although he does do a badass little Battletoad impression that caused me cognitive dissonance because I hated the character, but I enjoyed the portrayal. If that makes any kind of sense whatsoever. The character drove me nuts, but Jeff's impression was pretty awe-inspiring. I really liked it. If you want to say, how do you do a toad? Ask Jeff. He will tell you, because he's really good at doing toads. I really did enjoy hearing Jeff do his own thing, and I can just see how much he's refined himself since his last solo recording. Getting bits of him in snippets, such as the punny dwarf and the wayward bard, is really nice, but that's a supporting role. And to me, that's like putting Brad Pitt in the role of a stoner who just sits on a couch in an entire series of scenes, like in True Romance, rather than making him a killer character like Aldo Raines in Inglourious Bastards. With Jeff, more is better. And I think that's why I like him so much here, is he gets to do a few ladies, and get your mind out of the gutter, people. Seriously, he does a few ladies' voices, okay? And it's a job that seems to go more and more, like those jobs go more and more to, Annie or Lori, which is great because I love Annie and Lori. They do incredible They do incredible impressions of different women. But Jeff has his own style of doing ladies. For example, if you listen to Charles Dean's Lori Turnus, Jeff does one of the female voices, and he kills it. He kills like the new lady who strolls in. He just knocks her out of the park. And I don't know why he opted to take that role, but I'm really glad he did, because he just steals the scene every time she's on. And again, nothing against Lori or Annie, but Jeff just takes out all the stops and he has all the fun with this book, and we needed that. I think he needed to do this. I know he's done a couple other books recently solo, so it is what it is. I just like to hear him do what he does. Overall, the book is fun with frantic action and some nice lit RPG moments. Again, the title stuff was the best gaming part for me. I enjoyed the book a lot and look forward to, but with 60% less Toad maybe next time. So I wanted to have another sequence to this story, but tone back the Toad just a little bit, please, Mr. Verdi. Final score, 8.3 stars. It's really good. It's worth a listen. So the next book I'm doing in the series that I started off last week, in the Is It LitRPG or Not segment, is called Tech Mage in the Magitech Chronicles Volume 1 by Chris Fox, narrated by Ryan Kennard Burke, and it has a book length of 9 hours and 11 minutes.
Aaron lurched awake as the transport entered freefall. Gravity pulled him upward, jerking him to the limits allowed by his restraints. The ship shook violently, the thin lights flickering for several moments before returning to a steady illumination. "Wake up!" a female voice bellowed. The speaker moved to stand in front of Aaron, and he realized groggily that he was surrounded by other men and women in restraints. The chrome harnesses pinned their wrists between their legs, preventing them from standing or defending themselves. Glowing blue manacles attached his wrists to the harness, and he could feel their heat even through the armored gauntlets. He wore some sort of environmental armor, the metal scarred and pitted from long use. "Good! The sleep spell is wearing off." The speaker wore a suit of form-fitting body armor, much higher quality than Aaron's. Her helmet was tucked under one arm, and the other hand rested on a pistol belted at her side. A river of dark hair spilled down both shoulders. "You're probably feeling some grogginess. That's the after effects of the mind wipe. Each of you have been imprinted with a name. That will be the only thing you can remember."
So this is the second book in that segment that I'm talking about, and it was the second most requested book or suggested book. I've got several others, but this came in, really close to yesterday's Space Mage on people saying, can you check this out? I think this has that feel. So let me just kind of say, the book starts by throwing its main character off the deep end. The protagonist, Aaron, he awakens with no memory of who he was, where he is, or what the hell is going on around him. He quickly learns that he has been captured by slavers who have erased his mind. So he's not in a good spot to start with. It's really confusing for him. He is just kind of like, should I try to run? Can I run? Where am I going to go? He's on an alien planet. So he doesn't have a lot of options left to him, and he pretty much figures his best bet is to do what he's told until he can find something better. And best of all, what they're doing is they're forcing him, along with a shipload of other memory-challenged people, to go out and engage some enemies who, to say they're fairly nasty, vile, and deadly would be an understatement. They're really nasty, vile, and deadly people. They're pretty tough. Naturally, things do not work out so well, and Aaron and one other person, they barely survive the encounter, and it's only because he is wise enough to sacrifice some people and know when to run when it's time to run. Otherwise, he would have been a goner right off at the beginning if he'd done what he was told. But he's smart enough not to listen to the slavers exactly. He's like, I think I want to live through this. So it turns out that Aaron is actually fairly powerful. And when the slavers get busted by the local military, he gets drafted. He gets drafted because of what happened when he was forced to do things with the slavers. Totally against his will. But he did something wrong according to the military, and so he's now going to be mind-wiped again and forced into labor on their side. Now, the commander realizes that what he had done was completely against his will, so they don't mind-wipe him, but make him pretend that he's been mind-wiped. Everybody else gets their brains scrambled again, and he just plays along. So there is some kindness there in that, the setting. So, this is all against his will, and he's forced to go out and fight something called void worms, which is better known to you and me as space dragons, okay? Now, the dragons, they want to subjugate or destroy all non-dragon life, which that's a natural thing for a dragon. I mean, honestly, if you think about it, what do dragons do? They go out and they kill stuff, and then they eat it up, and then they hoard treasure. Well, these ones are just less about the treasure and more about the killing, okay? And the military, whose job it is to stop them, who's been tasked to stop them in this area, really is hard-pressed to do so, and they can barely hold them back as it is. The book is fairly action-packed, and it has a pretty cool concept in which magic is used to power weapons and spaceships. They have spell drives and spell rifles, and spells do most of the heavy combat stuff. The dragons are right evil bastards, and the situation is pretty dire enough that you actually care what's happening. As things go, the writing is nicely paced, and it has some good character development. The three main characters are Aaron, Nara, and Viora, the local military leader. Now, my biggest problem with the book was the magic beer segment, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but it was just really, it was a way out of context kind of thing. It should just, why it was put there, I don't know, it just did not make sense to me, other than just to negate some of the things that happened. I don't know, it had no emotional, I don't know, I just, the magic beer, if you ever get to that part, just ignore it, because it's just so dumb. And the thing is, with the three characters, the book switches back and forth really between Aaron and Viora a lot. And it's these flip-flops that kind of throw you off, because usually I think there's a nice flow, and you say, okay, I can see why you go here, you go here, you go here. And it was just kind of like, okay, Viora's time, or Aaron's time. And then you would have it intersections intercut with dragons popping in, doing things, and that sort of stuff. So you had, those two characters with the different dragons that either get killed or survive or so on and so forth. You get to see what they're thinking and how they're reacting to things that Aaron and Viora are doing. And it was those little jumps back and forth between characters. I think they should have just stuck with Aaron and kind of clued you in with what's going on with Viora, because she has a special vision that she's going to use to win the fight against the dragons, and she may die, or everybody may die doing it, but it would at least win the fight. So we have that vision, that prophecy in her head, and like I say, it should have just been pick one or the other, is the way I look at it. It took a little while for the narrator to grow on me, but once I'd settled into it, his voice kind of became a nice, enjoyable ride into the intergalactic space dragon fight. Sometimes it really felt like Burke was as into the story as the reader was. I mean, I think that he kind of picked it up because he was like, yeah, let's go, man. This is getting good. Let's do this. Because he had some fun with it. He had an excellent use of characterizations. The pacing and the battle scenes resounded with a fervor of fraught tension. I mean, he really knew how to bring home the fight when the time came. He packed in as much punch as he could. I mean, it was like Hawaiian punch, wham! You were knocked down. It was really neat. And the only issue I really had with the book was you really didn't know, is this sci-fi or fantasy? Because it's a mix and it's a blend. But it was one moment they're casting magic spells, the next thing they're using spell rifles and tanks, and the dragons, I always say dragons go more fantasy. Like, you can't put a dragon in a horror story and have a horror story. You have a dragon in a fantasy story that's supposed to have a little horror to it. Dragons are not horror creatures, they're fantasy creatures. And it's the same thing here. I can't put a dragon into sci-fi and leave it as sci-fi. I can call them anything you want, but to me, they're always going to be dragons, and if they're breathing fire or they're doing magic, they're in a fantasy world, okay? So whatever you think about that, the issue comes in, for me, is the characters, they seem to reflexively use their abilities. For example, Nara, who was one of the evil space pirates who had captured Aaron, and she had named Aaron, and if you notice, Nara is just Aaron spelled backwards, so she had reversed her name and given it to him. So the thing comes down to, Aaron and Nara, who both had their brains wiped, are using magic in ways that they shouldn't be able to with their limited knowledge. So it's a very reflexive ability. And Nara really goes into, she had to have been super powerful, because at the end of the book, she's doing things that she says, I think I can do this, and I don't know how I can do this, but I'm pretty sure I can pull this off, where other people would no way in hell be able to do it. So there's just a disconnect between, where they're at in this. And that's where I'm going to say, is this lit? Because you can say, well, they have powers, they grow, they do certain things, but, I'll put it like this. Is this in the realm of lit RPG? I'm going to ask that question. And again, I'm going to say no. The reasoning is that while it does have a sort of feel to it, it does feel like that. Like I just said, there's powers and things. There still isn't much in the way of defining those powers that Aaron has, to see if he's actually leveling or just getting back to a power level that he was at before he was mind wiped. And that surely seems to be the case. I don't think he's gotten stronger from the moment that he was mind wiped and started fighting to the point that he gets to the end of the book, because he's really strong. And there wasn't enough to go into that battle or those battles in between to make him just power up like that. He's not Super Saiyan by any means. And here, that's kind of what happens. I think that he basically, there is an unconscious or a subconscious rooting to his skills and abilities, like a muscle memory. And that's what he and Nara are both using as they do their fighting. So, does he level up? Nope, doesn't level up. There is a bit of growth, but if, like I say, it feels familiar as if you've been in that area before. And the only time it does sort of get lit is when he accidentally steals a new power from a god when he's with the slavers. That really isn't close otherwise. And that to me is not enough for me to go, yep, that's pretty close to being game lit or lit RPG to give it a thumbs up. Okay, I can't do that. It's not even close in my book. I can see where you might think it is. The story is interesting, but again, this is one of those books where I read it and I enjoyed it, but I don't think I would, or I know I won't grab the next book in the series either. It was fun, but it didn't snatch me up. I really don't care if the prophecy comes true. I don't care, if Viora is fired for her actions in the book and she has to go rogue as a military leader. There was nothing there. Like the characters didn't grab me. And I think it's because it roller coastered through those different characters too much. I didn't get attached to one or the other. So there was not enough for me to glom onto, so to speak, character wise. And I've really got to enjoy a character. And that's the problem. I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed the story. The character, not so much. And for me, there was no tie. There wasn't enough tie to the story for me to continue on. I pretty much know how it's going to go. It's all laid out. If you see what happens in book 1, I'm sure by book 5 it's going to be the same way. I don't think there's going to be any surprises. So final score for this is 7.6 stars, and it's not lit. Sorry. Well, that's our show, everyone. Thank you for watching today. It's deeply appreciated. We would ask if you could to please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and anywhere else you can get us. I'm happy if you can find me on the old jukebox somewhere. So if you could, please be kind enough to leave us some feedback below, either on Facebook, where we post the messages that the podcast has been released, or right here on the YouTube page itself, right below here. I really like getting feedback and information. I have heard some people say that they actually liked the idea of is it lit or not. And next week, I'm going to try and switch back and forth. I have another concept that I've come up with. I want to show what else have they done, which is where I pick either a narrator or a writer of LitRPG and show something that they performed that is not lit that you may be interested in, just to kind of round out your literary delicacies, as it will. That way, you're not just in the one thing, because there are writers, like, just for example, R.R. Verdi, who did the Goblin King that I've just talked about today. He is started out doing urban fantasy. So with that being the case, I may reference that in the future. Same with James Hunter. James Hunter did the Yancey Lazarus series. So you may see a couple other things come up. I want to do that. And with narrators as well, because sometimes they do something that's fantastic, but it's not lit, and you would never think to look at it and see. I like to check out other things that they've done, whether it's a writer or a narrator, and kind of get a feel for how things have been. So again, thank you all for watching. Keep listening, guys. Keep listening.